Morning, morning, morning. Yes, another rider, another story. Today we have Chatu. Did I say it right?
That was perfect.
He's an entrepreneur and he's designed the equivalent to audio books. So for those who don't read like me, this is something you're going to want to listen to. So nice to have you here today.
Nice to be here, Simon. Thank you for having me.
Tell us all about this new app. Why you came, how it came to your mind, what's so special about it in comparison to audiobooks?
Sure. So it's actually, I did it with a friend. His name is Cliff, and Cliff is dyslexic, right?
Okay,
and so
he's in my clan.
Sorry?
He's in my group.
Yeah. Oh, you're dyslexic.
Yeah,
oh, wow. You might really love the app then, actually.
Yeah.
He's dyslexic and he could not really read from a young age.
Okay.
And so his father used to read books to him. He read Harry Potter to him, etc. And that's actually how Cliff learnt English. And then I actually met him in college at Brown. We both went to Brown University. And at Brown, I was building my own company at the time in healthcare, and he was trying to build something in the space because he had already started using some other, devices to generate audio, right? And he was using Audible to listen to audiobooks. But then he was wondering, why can't I listen to my readings, my PDFs, any website that I visit? I want to be able to listen to anything that I read because I can't really read that easily. So that's where the idea initially came from. And the name for the company actually happened at a gym session. We used to go to a gym together, and we came up with the name Speechify at one of our gym sessions.
Speechify?
Yeah, Speechify.
Okay.
At the time, he didn't think it was a good name, but I was like, the name is not that important, let's just go with it, let's build the actual thing. And it actually stuck, and a lot of people now recognize the app.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, where did you start from in the sense of, okay, you both decided you're going to build the app. Talk us through the process of, how you got investment or,
Sure.
what to design, all of that kind of thing.
So let me quickly talk about how I got into it. I used to read one book every month, approximately, right?
Okay.
Throughout the time growing up. The second I started listening to books, it quadrupled. So I would read one book a week because I was listening when I was walking to class, when I was, sometimes when I was brushing my teeth before going to bed.
Can I ask you, do you find that you take in the information just as well when you don't read it?
I think, okay, so here's the thing. Just like reading is something you train from a young age, I think auditory consumption is something, if trained, you would comprehend just as well. It just depends on number of hours you've put into that kind of consumption. Does that make sense? Because reading you train from a very young age. What for me personally, I read and listen at the same time, and that is both I consume more and I comprehend better. So the reason is, for example, if I'm going at 1.5x speed on a podcast, right? When I'm reading and listening, I'm able to go at 2.3x because my eyes are aiding my ears, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes I go 3x. It depends on how quickly the narrator speaks, really. And so that's so I both read faster and comprehend better when I'm reading and listening. Mm-hmm. Mm. And so there was a point in my life where I would buy both the ebook and the audiobook. And I would literally flip the pages on the ebook while listening to the audiobook. And I always thought, wait, why does this not exist? Why is there no combined experience? Why can't the words just be moving on screen while I'm also listening to them? Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of what we're building now at Speechify, is a support for books in that way where you can read and listen at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah. I can also go back to your earlier question, what are the early days like? Well, we were fortunate in the sense that we went to a good university. We were surrounded by opportunity, and we were, we were both people who wanted to take a lot of risk. And both highly motivated. And so we would just I remember back in the day, we would work over winter break from 3 p.m. till 5 a.m. just coding, right? Just writing code, building this app, sharing it with users. Yeah.
Sorry, what was your degree in?
Computer science and applied math.
And so was Cliff's.
Cliff was actually renewable energy engineering, but he could code back then. He learned it by himself. He took an iOS course and he learned coding by himself.
Okay.
And so basically we would spend the day coding one day, and the next day Cliff would go to a nearby school for dyslexic kids, or a nearby school where kids generally, needed more help with reading, and he would just go demo the product to the students. And the teachers loved it, the students loved it. They really would consume a lot more as soon as they started using this product, right? And so that's how we got the initial users. And then it kept going from there. Initially, it was just an app for the MacBook. And now we also have an iOS app. We also have a Chrome extension. So we're everywhere that you would want to read. We want to be there. We want to give you a play button there. Yeah.
How long did it take Cliff to learn to code?
Learning to code it's funny because the way I recommend, to answer your question specifically, it took Cliff that course. That's it. And that course, I think he did it over a few weeks.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He wasn't that dyslexic.
But he's mathematically minded, right, as a person, and he has an aptitude for it. And so it was not very difficult for him.
Okay.
For me as well, and to just go off of that point, I do want to add that the best way to learn how to code, that I have found at least, is honestly to want to build something that you're very passionate about. It's like something is motivating you, right? Like I want to build this thing that I want people to use, and therefore I'm going to learn how to code, right? Yeah. That works way better. Yeah, it's a nicer feedback loop.
Give him a purpose.
Yeah.
Okay. So Cliff's learned how to code. You already knew how to code. You're coding every other day. What else was involved?
And then once you get like enough traction, you need to figure out, is this something people are willing to pay for, right? Like, is it an actual business, right? Like, can you like live off of this thing? Can you make some money? And it turned out that people who were dyslexic and who had reading disabilities, they were willing to pay a lot of money for this product because, it's basically letting you read, right? Which previously you were not able to do. And so that was a huge, huge benefit for them. And so we saw that there was a high willingness to pay. As soon as we saw that there was a high willingness to pay, it was now just a matter of figuring out how do you get all the people who can pay this much money to actually come and pay you. Right?
Come to your platform.
Yeah. And then eventually at some point, once you have enough users, you can go raise money, right? Some companies raise money even without any users. Go on.
Sorry, so just as where I was coming to. So you had to design it and make it first.
Yes. Then you had to get users.
And then you had to get users. Then you had to ask someone to invest in it.
Correct. I mean, people do it in different ways. I personally prefer to build the thing, make sure it works, make sure there's a viable business before I raise money because it's not my money, right?
Did it cost a lot to build it, or is that when you did the coding and built it all yourself?
Well, see, when you're young and passionate, you can build a lot with very little, if that makes sense. Because you don't have a lot of living expenses, So the best time I've found is actually in college and like just early years. Nowadays, even high school kids are starting very, very early. Mm-hmm. But in college, you already have basically your tuition, maybe your parents are paying for it or you're working a job, but you don't have too many needs. And so at that time, if you become passionate about building something and you get into coding, that's like, I think, prime time.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, because in college, most of the people are smoking, drinking and partying.
Yeah.
So if you have self-discipline, you can achieve a lot.
Correct. In fact, I partied after I raised a lot of money, to be honest.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's how the Mark Zuckerbergs and people make money, isn't it?
Yeah.
Become billionaires. So that brings to light, is your ambition to be the Indian Mark Zuckerberg?
No, my ambition is not really that. When it comes to work, my life goal is really to be at the pinnacle of my craft. So if you take a swimmer like Michael Phelps, like how do you measure like his ambition was to just be the best swimmer in the world, right? Yeah. So for me, like it's very similar. I want to be one of the best product builders in the world.
And you want to be known as that person to go to.
Correct. Like who can build incredible products that create value in people's lives. So if you take Speechify, it's amazing. It feels good because like you read all the reviews we get and you're actually changing people's lives. People who couldn't read are able to read. So I want to be one of the people in the world, one of the best people in the world in building products that create that kind of impact on people's lives. And that is really my ambition in life. And I think it just ties back to service to humanity, right? Like that's how I try to express my love for humanity through my craft.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you found, when you come in to find the investors, how was that? Was that an easy situation? And is it an app that was on iOS and Android, or how did you start it off as? Was it a piece of software on?
Correct. So it was a Mac app. So it was for MacBooks only in the beginning. And then we built an iOS app that's for iPhones. And then more recently, we also built an Android app. In terms of like, to answer your initial question of, investors and stuff, like I said before, we were a bit lucky in the sense that we were already within these, we were in an Ivy League school. Sorry. Yeah, we were in an Ivy League school. So it was not as hard for us to access investors. And in terms of like raising from investors, it's like, I would actually compare it a little bit to when you first start to, approach women and like try to become good with women. It's very similar. You face similar anxiety, similar, uncertainty. Obviously, it's very different skill set, but the emotions are similar, right? And then you get comfortable with it over time. Like as you do it more and more and more, you get more comfortable, you become more confident, you become more self-assured. And I think you just have to put in the repetitions, and you'll get rejected a lot. Like we used to get rejected a lot, and eventually it started working.
So what was your ultimate sales pitch? Give us your sales pitch when you're trying to convince an investor to invest in your product.
Yes. So I just want to be clear. Cliff is the one that does the fundraising. He's the CEO.
Okay.
But I do want to point out, I built my own healthcare company where I raised $15 million. So I do have experience in the area. The pitch for Speechify is simply that reading should not be a barrier to learning, right? And so, and it's the founder's story, right? Like that's Cliff's story. That was part of my story. And that's the story we tell investors. We're like, listen, do you like, and many of our investors are either dyslexic or they have kids who are dyslexic. And I think they connect with that story and they understand why it's important to have this product in the world and how it can make an impact on the people. In many cases, it makes an impact on their lives as well. And so I think it's easier to connect with that. Like if you're trying to pitch Google search to investors, it's very easy. Like you're like, yeah, how do you search every day? Well, you use my product, so that's why you should invest in my product. And so that's the pitch. It's like reading should not be a barrier to learning for anyone.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. That's good.
And then that's the high level pitch, right? You can, the details of the pitch are, you obviously might talk about the business. They might ask a lot of questions around your, how much do you spend versus how much do you make? And you get into some of the more intricate details. Yeah, but those come later.
I've had someone talk to me, I've interviewed someone before and they talked about apps.
Yeah.
So like $250,000 to design and things like that. Did you find that apps were that expensive, or did you do that you did your own manufacturing? Yeah,
like I design, I code, I learn whatever it takes to get things moving, right? And that's why I was talking back to college, because in college days, I felt completely unchained. I didn't feel like anything was a barrier. If I had to learn something, I would just go learn it. So no, I never spent $250,000 designing the app. In fact, the initial design, I believe, was like Cliff just sitting on one. I believe the software was called Sketch, and doing something. And for the healthcare company I was working on, I would just sit on the same software and I would build the screens myself. Sometimes I wouldn't even design them. I would just directly code them because I already knew what I needed to do.
All right, that's good.
So the reason somebody would say something like, "Oh, it's $250,000," is because, well, they just haven't been around really. $250K and things like that. That happens when you're like trying to work with somebody who's an expert. But like honestly, like my favorite people to work with are like hungry young people who are very skilled and very passionate, and they don't charge a ridiculous amount of money. You see, as an entrepreneur, you need to figure out the cheapest way for you to build something good and get it out there. And $250K for design is not reasonable. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. So now you're on all apps. You're on the computers, you're on the iOS, and you're on Android. Is that right?
Correct, yes.
Okay. You've been a great guest. It's very informative. I'll probably download your software and use it myself.
Amazing.
Where can people...
I'm glad my pitch worked on you. Yeah.
Where can people find you social media wise?
I don't use social media actually, but you can just Google me, Chetu Aluru. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't use social media, unfortunately.
Okay, it's probably a wise decision. What about the app software? What's it? It's on all platforms?
Yeah, you can find Speechify on the iOS App Store, on the Android Play Store, or on Google Chrome's extension store, web store.
And the Speechify doesn't have a Facebook or an IG?
We do.
Account?
I believe it's Speechify_audio.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot.
Also, by the way, one last thing before we hop off here. We just recently added Snoop Dogg's voice, and we also have Gwyneth Paltrow's voice, so you can actually listen to whatever you want to read with Snoop Dogg's voice, so it's pretty cool.
Oh.
Yeah.
You going big time then. If you're doing those kind of contracts already, you're going real big time.
We're doing our best, yeah.
Yeah, I wish we had more time, because that brings into play about the IP, intellectual property, and agreements, and all of those things that you had to negotiate.
Yes, yeah.
I see. And for once, Snoop Dogg ain't doing it for free, so you must be making money to spend money, spending money to make money.
Yeah, well, briefly, it's similar to raising money. Like, you need to find a way to connect with in this case, a celebrity, and you need to have something compelling to offer for them to also be interested, basically, right? So it's very similar to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot for that, and we wish you well.
Thank you so much, Simon. It was my pleasure.
We hope that episode enhanced your life. We post an interview every day, as well as vlogging on our social media channels. Don't forget to subscribe to get our latest episode.